Hello gainers, welcome to my little channel in the internet called Fit of Philosophy. I'm Ralphie and you join me part of a series at the moment called Funeral Stories. I've written a book called Life, Death and Whiskey, and whilst it does talk about whiskey, it also talks about situations I encountered in my career as an undertaker, working in Glasgow from the 1980s into the 2000s. So it was over 20 years I did the job in what is arguably the largest single funeral providing service in the whole of Europe, and it was the cooperative. Very interesting job because it was a very busy operation, with thousands of funerals being arranged and conducted each year. And as you can imagine, every now and again we would come across a circumstance and a situation which really wasn't normal. And I'm going to talk to you about the three sisters. This is one such situation. It really happened. It seemed quite extraordinary, and yet it's not that unusual because we witnessed it actually happen. And this is what happens when families go to war with one another and the consequences of it. But we're going to have to start with the mother, who, when her husband died from alcohol abuse, she was left to single-handedly bring up her three young daughters who'd been born a year apart, which she did with a lot of determination and willpower. The first thing she had to do as a single mother was find herself a source of income to feed and clothe her family. And she literally walked round the corner from the bungalow in which she lived to a local garden centre and got a job there part-time behind the till. But within a year she was managing the office, and within 3 years she was the manager of the garden centre. And at that point, because the owners were getting elderly and their own family weren't interested in the business apart from the money it provided for them to spend, she was left to kind of basically control the whole business, which she did. Excuse me, a little spider coming down here. Oh, I love the natural world. It's always, even when it's quiet, it's busy. There we go. No more spiders. Tiny little things, very slow, very harmless. She was quite demanding with the wages she expected as the manager, and the owners being elderly, to be honest, they got bullied by her. So they paid her a significant amount of money to look after the entire business, which she did very well. She was able to provide for her three daughters, although she didn't spend much on herself apart from the cigarettes she smoked. That was her big habit. Cigars can be a habit too, but we don't inhale cigars. That's the difference. And these are a once a week treat, which is certainly easier in the pocket. But the three daughters wanted for nothing. They were treated like princesses. They each had their own pony. They went to private schools. They went holidays to Switzerland. And as their mother said, you get one shot of life. I'm busy preparing you to achieve a lot. And they did in their own way. The three of them married relatively early to successful professional husbands who had a solid income and good social status. But apart from that, I think the three daughters, well, the impression I got anyway from the feedback was that they despised each other because the mother generated an intense rivalry amongst them and a high level of competitiveness, which led them to have quite a cynical relationship within the family and between family members. And this really didn't impact much until the mother passed away from lung cancer. She smoked so many cigarettes. It was the one real pleasure she had in life. And when she did, it was the youngest daughter who was living nearby, married to a lawyer, who informed the second daughter, who was in France, married to a politician, and the third daughter, who was down in the south of England, married to a banker from the City of London, that their mother had sadly passed away. There was a lot of phone calls and a lot of tears and a lot of sentiment, and then a little period of silence, at which point the youngest daughter produced her mother's will, which, although the estate had been divided equally amongst the three daughters as originally informed by the mother, the actual contents of the bungalow, the contents of the house, were all to go to the youngest daughter, at which point the oldest daughter examined a photograph sent from a picture by the youngest daughter as part of a Christmas card, and noticed that there were some valuable items had appeared in the bungalow. And she asked the youngest daughter, where did those items come from and who paid for them? Now, the youngest daughter replied to the oldest daughter, I'm far too upset. I've just lost my mother, brackets, our mother, right? So this is not the time for that. The youngest daughter organised the funeral, which was a burial, in a local churchyard because she'd made a bequeathal, a donation to the local Anglican church, because it was a pretty situation, a pretty old church, a pretty graveside, a pretty churchyard, all very picturesque and pretty. And importantly, it was just down the road from where she lived, so she could go and visit her mother as often as she wanted. The second daughter understood this, the middle daughter, because she was in France, married to a politician, but the older daughter was not happy about it and stated so. However, the funeral went ahead. The three daughters attended, but they ordered separate limousines for each of them so they wouldn't have to sit together in the one car. At the graveside, they stood at separate parts and not together with their family around them, and there was very little exchange of communication between them because the vicar, the Anglican priest, kind of really picked up on this. And basically in his eulogy, he had to approach the three daughters separately to get their input to put something together for everybody. Do you see where this is going? A month later, the oldest daughter informed the youngest daughter that she had a letter of intent that she'd discovered in documents given to her by her late mother, stating that she didn't want to be interred in any other cemetery except the main cemetery down where the oldest daughter lived in the south of England. She then demanded that there be an exhumation of the coffin from the grave and that the coffin be transferred in a security van, seriously, a security van, to the south of England to a local funeral director who would then arrange for the coffin to be reinterred in the eldest daughter's choice of cemetery, as disclosed in this letter of intent. The youngest daughter was furious. The middle daughter says, just leave things as they are. What is done is done. But the youngest daughter was having none of it. She hired a private detective. But the private detective didn't uncover anything suspicious or untoward. And as the letter of intent was recognised by a lawyer, it had legal status, and therefore the mother was in fact dug up from her burial place, transferred to the south of England and reburied again. It was only after this, at which the oldest daughter attended this, it was after this took place that the private investigator came back to the youngest daughter. This is the one she'd hired, and says, actually, we think there's something suspicious because the writing pressure on the paper does not tie in with what your mother's handwriting was. And furthermore, the style of the pen used, the ballpoint pen, is not a style that matches any of your other pens used by your mother. The youngest daughter then ordered further inquiries, and expert witnesses were called, at which they declared the letter of intent was in fact fake, and they stated so in a court of law, at which the youngest daughter decided she was suing the oldest daughter. Meanwhile, the middle daughter tried to calm things down and save it getting any worse by suggesting that the body be dug up again, the coffin be dug up again from where it had just been buried, and that a cremation take place, and that the mum's ashes be divided evenly between the three daughters in a small urn, matching urns. This was agreed upon. The body was dug up, it was cremated, and the ashes were distributed, sent recorded delivery through the postal service to the three daughters. At which point the estate, which was paying for all this, was in a situation where the lawyers had to deal with the legal ramifications between legal systems, between lawyers, and it was going to take several years. There was also questions raised and inquiries into the integrity of the private investigator, and also into the state of the mental health of the oldest daughter, who was found to have a drug problem as a result of private investigator inquiries. The consequence was that 2 years later, when the daughters finally had the estate settled, the bungalow was sold, all the assets were pulled together, they were about to get their inheritance, it's when they discovered there was nothing left. Because all the money had been spent on burials, exhumations, second exhumation, a second burial, a cremation, and hundreds of £1,000s of lawyers' fees in processing and sorting all of this out through the legal system. I must add, by the way, that this doesn't happen very often. It's very, very occasional that it happens, but it's not unheard of. But see, when it does, my goodness, everybody gets to know about it. It's the way of the world.